Hey, what's up, guys? How are you doing? So, I wanted to give you a perspective of Target from a former employee, me. So, when I got hired at Target, I got hired for the tech department and I was really excited. Basically, what I did is I had to push the product onto the sales floor, and then you have to pull the products for the inventory. And one thing that I could say about the job, I loved it. It was the best job I ever had in my life. I could help people with video games. I could help people with books because in the tech department, they consider books tech. The DVDs and the Blu rays and the computers and the laptops. And I felt like it was the first time at any job I've ever had that my knowledge could actually benefit, the company. So, one thing I could tell you about Target that is not the best is the inventory. What incentive do you give the customers? They say guest, but I could say customers because I don't work for them anymore. What incentive do you have to go from one Target to another Target? Absolutely nothing. In fact, their games are always the same in stock at each location. At least if you went to GameStop, people trade in games and then you have a different selection that you can choose from. I don't understand why Target doesn't have something where you could trade in games. I think that would actually benefit them. I know that Best Buy used to have an ability to trade in used games. I don't see it anymore. It used to have discounted prices because they were pre-owned. Um, One thing about Target, if you have an item that you're looking for, we have something called a Zebra. That's the device that you see they work with, walk around with. Um, it can actually tell you what's in stock at different locations. Now, that's not good if it's a scalper, but if it's like, a person that would like the system for their kids or whatever, then, you could say, hey, just to let you know, the Stoughton has that in stock, supposedly. That was one thing that was very aggravating about Target. The inventory would say that we have things in stock when we really don't have it in stock. I would have plenty of times that a customer would go out of their way to come to our location just to find out that we actually don't have the item in stock, even though the Zebra says that we had it in stock. Then I found out secrets that they would have back stock. That's basically when you take an item and you put it in some cubby hole. Well, people would scan the location of the back stock and then put items, and then they'd put items that they wanted to buy and they wouldn't scan it into the back stock. And there's supposed to be a person that goes through all the back stock to make sure everything's in order, but that person doesn't do their job, and then it messes up the other person's job. One thing I could say about Target that I really hated was doing multiple tasks. And what I mean by that is after the tech department, after a year, they demoted me to cashier. Well, when I was a cashier, I was also doing drive up. And while I was doing drive up, I was also doing, self checkout. And I'm like, hold up. You got me doing three different things. I'm just one person. But when I worked at the tech department, I was really happy. In fact, a lot of people didn't like me because I was happy. They don't like you being happy at your job. They want you to be miserable. Well, too bad. I had the knowledge and I was able to benefit all of the customers. And that's always what I've wanted. um, it'd be cool when I go down an aisle and I would talk to the customer. I'd say, "Hey, what's up? How you doing?" And they're like, "Oh yeah, I haven't got a Switch yet." And I was thinking, "What do you think's a good game for Switch?" And then I'd go and I'd point at all of them and I'd say, "Well, I own this one, I own that 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 one." And I said, "Just ask me anything." And I was like, it was somewhere that my video game knowledge benefited. And I was like, this is awesome, you know? And then the only thing that was dumb about tech department was get ready when you're ready to buy something, you're going to be waiting like 10 to 20 minutes because there's nobody at tech department. And the reason why is because they have one person doing everything. Instead of just having one person at tech department and only strictly tech, they have you doing all kinds of other different tasks. And then they're complaining about, why isn't there anybody for tech department? I'll tell you why. Because the company's being too cheap and doesn't want to have two people at all times for a drive up. And then the drive up is timed. You only have like 3 minutes to do the drive up. Well, the problem with that is there's people inside that you need to do drive up, and there's people outside that you have to do drive up. And instead of the company being smart enough to have two people, one at the desk and one for drive up, talk about a complete nightmare. The only thing that was beneficial about being a cashier is I was an undercover tech department. So if I saw, the person got a Switch OLED, I'd say, "Oh, well, just to let you know, the internal storage is really small, so you probably should get a micro SD for that." Just little things like that. And then they get mad. "Oh, you're having a conversation with the customer." Even though I'm scanning items as a cashier, they really just don't, they just want you to be miserable. They don't want you to be happy. Because I can't tell you how many times I would get in an awesome conversation with the person that I'm, checking out at the cash register, and people are like, "Oh, you're talking too much." And I'm like, I'm scanning the items and we're just having a regular conversation. Like, you can calm down, thank you. Anyway, so they laid off their on demand workers, which I was one of them. They never told me they laid off on demand workers. They never told me they laid me off. And then I said something. I said, "Hey, what's going on? Why can't I sign into my app on my job?" They have this Target app, My Work, something like that. Anyway, and they're like, "Oh, yeah, we laid you off." And I was like, "Were you going to send something in the mail? Were you going to tell me?" Nope, nothing. So then they reinstated me. But when they reinstated me, they said, "We're not going to give you a set schedule." And I said, "Okay." I'm like, "So why'd you reinstate me if you're not going to give me hours?" And they're like, "Oh, well, you know what? You can pick up hours." No, I couldn't. The hours were like 4 p.m. to 10 p.m. I can't do that. That's not possible. So I went in and I did emails to the company, and they're like, "Well, there's nothing we could do about it." So then they terminated me. And I was like, nice, very nice. So Target is dead to me. And if anyone watching this goes to Target, don't go to Walmart. You can save way more money, like $20 to $30 on video games. Another thing about Target that's so stupid, I was the tech department, right? Their tech sucks. Go to Best Buy. Best Buy has way better tech than tech department. How are you going to have a title, tech department, but hardly have any tech? Even the video game selection sucks. The Xbox is practically nothing, like 10 games or something now on a small aisle, right? The PS5 games is a small selection. At least when you go to Walmart, there's cases of every platform you could think of. Switch and PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X. Go to Walmart. There's really no reason to go to Target. They are super expensive for no reason. Even the PS5s. Oh, you can only order online. And then all of a sudden they change it, and then you could just get a PS5 over the counter. There's no consistency. As I said, for tech department, I love Target. But when they demoted me and I was cashier, I hated Target. I was like, I could be a cashier anywhere. I could be a cashier at Stop and Shop, I don't understand why you would go to one Target to another when they have the same exact video games and the same prices. It's not like you go there and there's a sale going on only at that one location. They're the same everywhere. But that's a little rant about Target. And my main goal is to work for a game company, like GameStop or Replayed or some, game company, a company that sells video games. That would be awesome. Because then I could utilize my knowledge and then bam, become a supervisor. Who knows? Anyway, thank you for watching. Bye.